There are two types of regular income tax. The first type is the individual income tax, and the second type of regular income tax is the corporate income tax. I will first discuss the individual income tax before the corporate income tax. The individual income tax is also called as progressive income tax. Bakit siya tinawag na progressive? Kasi habang pataas ng pataas ang taxable income per year, pataas ng pataas din ang income tax. Kasi pag sinabing progressive, ang ibig sabihin nun, pataas ng pataas. The individual income tax is determined by reference to a tax table of progressive tax rates. That means in order to compute the income tax due of the individual taxpayers, kailangan nating mag-base sa income tax table for individual taxpayers. And the income tax table for individual taxpayers for the year 2018 to year 2022 is provided below. In the income tax table for individual taxpayers for the year 2018 to year 2022, we have two columns. The first column is for the taxable income per year, and the second column is for the income tax rate. If the taxable income per year is 250,000 pesos and below, the income tax rate is 0%. That means kung hindi lumagpas sa 250,000 pesos ang taxable income per year, walang tax na babayaran. There is no income tax due. If the taxable income per year is above 250,000 pesos to 400,000 pesos, the income tax rate is 20% of the excess over 250,000 pesos. Above 250,000 pesos to 400,000 pesos means that the taxable income per year is above 250,000 pesos but not over 400,000 pesos. If the taxable income per year is above 250,000 pesos to 400,000 pesos, only the excess over 250,000 pesos has 20% income tax. Kasi yung 250,000 pesos, wala siyang income tax. Or the 250,000 pesos is not taxable. If the taxable income per year is above 400,000 pesos to 800,000 pesos, the income tax rate is 30,000 pesos plus 25% of the excess over 400,000 pesos. Kung mapapansin ninyo, kung ang taxable income per year is above 400,000 pesos pero hindi lumagpas ng 800,000 pesos, meron ng agad-agad na 30,000 pesos plus the excess over 400,000 pesos na pinapatawan ng 25% income tax rate. If the taxable income per year is above 800,000 pesos to 2 million pesos, the income tax rate is 130,000 pesos plus 30% of the excess over 800,000 pesos. If the taxable income per year is above 2 million pesos to 8 million pesos, the income tax rate is 490,000 pesos plus 32% of the excess over 2 million pesos. If the taxable income per year is above 8 million pesos, the income tax rate is 2,410,000 pesos plus 35% of the excess over 8 million pesos. After knowing the income tax table for individual taxpayers for the year 2018 to year 2022, let's proceed to the scope of the progressive tax. The progressive tax covers all individuals except NRA NETB. Applicable ang progressive tax sa lahat ng individuals maliban sa NRA-NETB or non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business, because the non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business is subject to 25% final tax on gross income. Okay, let's now apply the progressive tax by having an example. A resident citizen has a compensation income of 1,250,000 pesos within the Philippines and 150,000 pesos abroad. Compute the income tax due. Remember, in the general rules in income taxation, a resident citizen is taxable on his or her income within and outside the Philippines. Therefore, both the 1,250,000 pesos and the 150,000 pesos are taxable because the individual taxpayer here is a resident citizen. Do not forget the general rules in income taxation because they are connected in the computation of income tax due. Let's now solve the total income tax due. The taxable compensation income is 1,400,000 pesos. This is the sum of 1,250,000 pesos and 150,000 pesos. Less lower limit of the income bracket where the taxable income qualifies. Yung 1,400,000 pesos ay above 800,000 pesos pero hindi above 2 million pesos. That means the income tax rate is 130,000 pesos plus 30% of the excess over 800,000 pesos. Therefore, ang lower limit natin dyan ay 800,000 pesos. That means meron na tayong agad-agad na tax due na 130,000 pesos. Next, kukunin natin yung difference ng 1,400,000 pesos and 800,000 pesos. The excess is 600,000 pesos. After getting the excess, imumultiply natin yan sa bracket marginal rate na 30%. 600,000 pesos times 30%, that is equal to 180,000 pesos. Therefore, the total income tax due is 310,000 pesos. That is the sum of 130,000 pesos and 180,000 pesos. Let's have another example. A resident alien has a compensation income of 2,200,000 pesos in the Philippines and 1,250,000 pesos abroad. Compute the income tax due. Remember, in the general rules in income taxation, a resident alien is taxable only on his or her income derived or earned within the Philippines. Therefore, only the 2,200,000 pesos is taxable because the individual taxpayer here is a resident alien. Let's now solve the total income tax due. The taxable compensation income is 2,200,000 pesos. Do not include the 1,250,000 pesos because that is not taxable here in the Philippines. Less lower limit of the income bracket where the taxable income qualifies. Yung 2,200,000 pesos ay above 2 million pesos but not over 8 million pesos. Ang income tax rate niyan ay 490,000 pesos plus 32% of the excess over 2 million pesos. That means meron ng agad-agad na 490,000 pesos na tax due. Next, i-compute natin yung excess ng 2,200,000 pesos sa 2 million pesos. Ang excess ay 200,000 pesos. After getting the excess, we will multiply the 200,000 pesos by 32%. The 32% is the bracket marginal rate. 200,000 pesos times 32%, that is equal to 64,000 pesos. Therefore, the total income tax due is equal to 554,000 pesos. That is the sum of 490,000 pesos and 64,000 pesos. On January 1, 2018, the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Law, or the TRAIN Law, introduced the optional 8% income tax. The optional 8% income tax is an optional income tax for self-employed and/or professionals wherein they can opt to be taxed at 8% of sales or receipts and other non-operating income. That means effective January 1, 2018, in place of the progressive income tax computed under the individual tax table or the progressive tax table, and 3% percentage business tax on sales or receipts, meron silang option para mataksan ng 8% of sales or receipts and other non-operating income. Let's now proceed to the corporate income tax. The corporate income tax is commonly referred to as the regular corporate income tax or RCIT. This corporate income tax or regular corporate income tax is basically a proportional tax or flat tax at a rate of 30% on taxable income. So that means pag sinabing RCIT, automatic na 30% on taxable income na. Meron kasi tayong tinatawag na MCIT or Minimum Corporate Income Tax na 2% naman siya of total gross income subject to regular tax. The regular corporate income tax rate is 30% while the minimum corporate income tax rate is 2%. Itong RCIT or Regular Corporate Income Tax ay applicable sa lahat ng corporation except yung mga corporation na subject to final tax such as non-resident foreign corporation or NRFC and Foreign Currency Deposit Units or FCDU interest income not subjected to final tax. Aside from that, hindi rin applicable yung RCIT sa Special corporations or those subject to preferential. Pag sinabing preferential, ang example niyan ay lower tax rates or special regimes. Hindi rin applicable ang RCIT sa exempt corporations. Okay, let's have an example. A corporation has a net income of 1,200,000 pesos in the Philippines and 800,000 pesos abroad. Assuming the corporation is a domestic corporation, compute the income tax due. Remember, in the general rules in income taxation, a domestic corporation is taxable on its income earned within the Philippines and outside the Philippines. Therefore, in this problem, both the 1,200,000 pesos and 800,000 pesos are taxable in the Philippines. Let's now solve the income tax due. The taxable income is 2 million pesos. This is the sum of the 1,200,000 pesos and 800,000 pesos. Take note, the corporation here is a domestic corporation. Both the income in the Philippines and income abroad are taxable in the Philippines. Next, imumultiply natin yung tax rate na 30%. 2 million pesos times 30%, that is equal to income tax due na 600,000 pesos. Let's have another example. A corporation has a net income of 1,200,000 pesos in the Philippines and 800,000 pesos abroad. Assuming the corporation is a resident foreign corporation, compute the income tax due. Remember, sa general rules in income taxation, a resident foreign corporation is taxable only on its income earned or derived within the Philippines. So in this problem, only the 1,200,000 pesos is taxable in the Philippines. Let's solve the income tax due. The taxable income is 1,200,000 pesos. Do not include the 800,000 pesos which is derived or earned abroad. Kasi ang corporation dito ay resident foreign corporation. Do not forget the rules or the general rules in income taxation. After that, we will multiply the tax rate na 30%. 1,200,000 pesos times 30%, that is equal to income tax due na 360,000 pesos. Now, at this point, it is important to explain the minimum corporate income tax or MCIT, the special corporations, and the exempt corporations. Kanina, nabanggit ko itong minimum corporate income tax at sinabi ko kanina na this is computed as 2% of total gross income subject to regular tax. That means para makompute yung minimum corporate income tax or MCIT, kailangan nating i-multiply yung 2% sa total gross income subject to regular tax. See the difference? Magkaiba ang base ng minimum corporate income tax sa base ng corporate income tax or regular corporate income tax. Sa minimum corporate income tax, ang base ay yung total gross income subject to regular tax. Pero sa regular corporate income tax, ang base ay yung taxable income. The corporate taxpayers are subject to this minimum corporate income tax kahit na sila ay nalulugi sa kanilang business. Even if they have net loss, they are still subject to the minimum corporate income tax. Sa special corporations naman, special corporations are the corporations enjoying lower tax rates but not 0%. Special kasi mas mababa sa 30% yung tax rate. Pero yun nga lang, hindi dapat 0%. Kasi kapag 0%, exempt corporations na yon at hindi na special corporations. Ang examples ng special corporations ay private schools at non-profit hospitals. Those are just some of the examples of special corporations. Actually, sa mga nakaraang lessons, nasabi ko na yung mga examples ng special corporations. Ang exempt corporations naman ay corporations enjoying 0% tax rate with no tax dues. Yan yung difference ng exempt corporations sa special corporations kasi nga dapat 0% tax rate. Hindi sila pinapatawan ng tax. Ano-ano yung mga examples ng exempt corporations? Government agencies, aside from that, non-profit organizations with no taxable income, exempt corporations din, yung mga cooperatives, and those registered with the Board of Investments or BOI enjoying income tax holiday or ITH.